The question today is, or the question that I'm addressing today is, how do you have spirituality and martial arts together? In other words, how can and how do they coexist? Well, I can speak from my own personal journey, my own personal uh, experience by saying this for me. Just so happens that uh, when I was a child, I grew up in a Baptist church. My grandmother and my mom and my brother and I, we attended services in the Baptist church. So I had sort of a foundation, even being very, very young. Uh, I won't say being indoctrinated, but having the experience of the church world. So I knew about prayer. I had a fundamental idea of who God was, or the Creator, and Jesus, His Son, or Yeshua now. And so that foundation pretty much was already laid and a part of who I was as a person. So even with that, when I began the martial arts, still at a younger age, uh, they seem to have melded together for me. And the fact that I accepted that there was a creator or a supreme being and studying martial arts at the same time, it was just simply who I was. And I didn't really come into a full understanding of the dynamics of spirituality until I began to progress through my younger adult life. So it's not something that you really stop or pause and think about. It's just really who you are. It speaks to you, or it spoke to myself in this particular instance and or experience. So I don't really subscribe to a religion per se, because religions are created by men. And oftentimes those creations by men, those dogmas, if you will, are designed to cater to men's desires to do what they want to do, and excluding the things oftentimes that they should do as it relates to God's will or the Creator's will. So, I'm not trying to give anyone a lesson. I'm just simply telling you what my overstanding is and how I see things. So, when we talk about spirituality, this is what I fundamentally believe, and that is just simply this: if we are living organisms and we are members of the human family, we all have individual identities. Our mothers, fathers, family give us a name at birth. And we all occupy a physical body, and within that body is who we are. That's our spirit. It's the spirit of life. And we have our own identities, as I said. That's what separates Reginald from the next man, the next woman, next man, the next person, and the next person. Our own individuality, because we are all different from one another. So now, with that said, when we die and this physical existence goes back to the earth from where it came, because all of the elements that's in our body is in the soil, it's in the earth as well. So that is where we came from. And as the scripture says, we will return to the dust from which we came. So now that spirit that makes us alive returns to the Creator, or to Him that gave it to us and gave us life to include an identity that makes us who we are. So now, not trying to browbeat you, the spiritual side of a martial artist, I believe that it is something that you acquire early on in your life, but it can be obtained in your later years. In other words, How we are taught values at a very young age oftentimes reflects or influences our spirituality as we mature as adults. It just so happens in my life, it began as a child. And my spiritual growth developed along with my martial arts training. And they met each other at some point and they became one. So there are people who say that martial arts promotes violence. It's kind of a hard pill to swallow for someone who has done this many years, such as I. And there are many more, hundreds of thousands of martial arts practitioners that will affirm what I'm saying. And that is this: even though the vast majority of martial arts styles and systems, when they came into existence, they were to defend the individuals, the families, the villages, the provinces, or even the countries in which those people lived against tyranny of outsiders or enemies of those individuals. Even though that was the original purpose, because martial does mean war arts. So even though that was the original meaning, there still was a spiritual development or aspect of martial arts. It always has been. It's not always about fighting in war. The purpose of martial arts, as I'm speaking to you right now, is to learn to develop one's character. That's it. That's the most important part of martial arts. To learn how to love oneself and to respect oneself and to love and respect your fellow man. That's the spiritual aspect of martial arts. To do no harm to anyone who is not trying to do harm to you. And I learned when I was very, very young in the martial arts that you never fight, you never use your skills against any other human being unless your life and your well-being depends upon it, or is being threatened, I should say. And I have taught my students all of these many years the same. I don't care what anyone says to you. There's no reason to put your hands on someone else. I don't care if a person even touches you. Sometimes there's no reason to use your skill against them. You must remember this. As we live and as we develop as human beings, we are supposed to become wiser, not dumber. Because once you become proficient in martial arts and you realize what it is that you truly possess, the skill sets to cripple, maim, and even potentially kill another human being, you should have enough wisdom and understanding and consideration that you would say, I will never ever use my art for any purpose other than what I stated earlier, to defend myself or the weak against harm or threat of danger, to include to protect your life. That's the only reason you would ever use martial arts. And unfortunately, there are some, and I hate to say many, but there are, who exist, who study martial arts, and many of them have not been in the martial arts a lifetime, but there are some who study and have trained in martial arts who are bullies, very arrogant and narcissistic, and they have never gotten the lesson that I am giving to you right now. Anyone can kick and punch. But it takes a true master to be in control of self and to know where to draw the line. It's really simple. That was really it, and that was all. So, spirituality, I believe that everyone should have some form or sense of there being a divine providence or a divine creator who is responsible for all of us who live upon this place we call earth. We must learn how to get along with everyone, despite animosities, despite disagreements, despite prejudices. It's not how the other person sees us and feels about us and thinks about us and hates us, but it is how we see them and respond to them. And that is what a true character is. This is Brother Teacher. What say ye? We're out.